Hi, Jim Wrinn. We're here with David Lassen and Brian Schmidt, and we're going to chat a little bit about Newswire this week. We had a 50-story Newswire week this week. There were 50 pieces in the Newswire. It was quite a busy week. Things are starting to ramp up this year, and you guys have been doing some traveling. By the way, Steve Sweeney, who's usually on our program today, is also traveling. He's over at Transportation Research Board meeting in Washington, D.C., and he'll be back next week to talk about that. But I want to throw it off to you guys right now. David, you just came back from the Contractors meeting in California, and then the both of you were at the Midwest Area Shippers meeting this week in Chicago. Tell us a little bit about what you learned. I know you wrote some stories for Newswire, but tell us just a little bit about what you found out.
Well, to start with the Mars conference, I thought the most interesting thing just was the kind of the quality of the speakers. They had three Class 1 presidents.
You had Matt Rose. You had
Lance Fritz
from UP,
and
Pat, the new guy,
Pat
KCS.
Ottensmeyer, yes,
yeah.
who's a trains reader. I introduced myself, he told me that, so that's always good to know.
It's good to know.
And then you had the head of the Surface Transportation Board, which obviously is in the news right now with the possible CP&S merger.
And I thought it was interesting because the reporting you guys sent back, you had Lance Fritz, who was completely opposed to mergers. Then you had Matt Rose, who was embracing mergers. And did the guy from KCS embrace them or reject them, or did he express any opinion?
He didn't really discuss that. He was talking more about, his emphasis was more talking about the Mexican part of KCS operations, sure. Which I think, I think that was a viable thing to let the shippers know about, right. That they're the pipeline now to all that industry that's in growth down there. So
well, Mexico came up a lot in the conversation at Mars. As UP, one of the analysts, and KCS both talked heavily about Mexico and the role that it could play with U.S. trade and how that could shape the rail network in North America in the future.
And didn't UP talk about how they have so many entry points into Mexico? It's like 7?
Yeah, UP is the only railroad that hits all 7 major gateways, I think he said.
That's pretty incredible. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and then of course KCS runs
they have
directly,
the reach.
And
they have the reach down into Mexico.
And they have a port that they're involved with on the west coast of Mexico, which they think is going to become a major player in the container business. It's undergone some major growth already, and it still has quite a bit of room for expansion.
What about the Contractors meeting out in San Diego last week? What did you learn there?
Well, not surprisingly, given what we're seeing with railroad earnings right now, the railroads are going to pull back a little bit on spending, but not maybe as much as you would think. They're going to stay pretty good in terms of the maintenance work. It's just you're going to see a little less, I think, in terms of expansion spending.
Is this sort of like the catch-up period they're looking at now, where they can catch up and get some projects done?
Some of them are looking at it that way. I think some of them are just thinking that it's time to be a little more prudent with their spending in light of what we heard at both places about a lot of uncertainty, what the year ahead is going to look like.
Any particular Newswire stories that caught your attention this week, guys?
Well, this week I was certainly looking at the business class being added to the Amtrak's Cardinal between New York, and Chicago, the long way. I thought that was curious because, 30 years ago Amtrak killed the slumber coach, which was the cheap way for a little better accommodation to go the long way.
I love slumber coach. It was great.
And now with all the changes Amtrak's having with dining cars and bundling it, the test on the Silver Star, this seems like another test that they can see if they can get a little extra revenue, make it a little more comfortable for the passengers, maybe a little more quiet too if you're not in with all the coach passengers.
Also interesting, of course, that's the route that is partially shared with the Hoosier State, which has some of those amenities now. So I think that's probably a good thing for the passengers in that those amenities are available every day now rather than just on the days the Hoosier State runs.
That's pretty nice. That's a real nice service now.
Yeah,
that's cool. Anything else, Newswire, you guys saw that got your curiosity up?
I think really Mars was the big thing on my agenda this week. I mean, it was, as always, that's a really amazing conference now in that, there are those regional groups all over the country, but this one is just so much bigger than all the others. There were 600 people at that meeting this time. Most of those others draw like 100 to 150 apparently.
Yeah, and you were saying, Brian, that I think that it's grown quite a bit.
Yeah, it has over 150 new first-time attendees this year, which is pretty large. I think it's more than 500 people now, they said, for this winter meeting. And they'll meet again in July in Wisconsin.
Nice. It was, of course, this week, the big story for me, being a steam locomotive lover, was that Norfolk and Western 611, which we did a nice videotape about last year, is back on the road again this year for 4 weekends. It's a small, compact schedule, but it is a schedule nevertheless. And since Norfolk Southern's busy with some other things, it's nice to see 611 out anyway. But like I said, glad to see that schedule out, and ends all the speculation. So now we can all plan our spring travel to go and hit the best 484 that was ever built. So anyway, glad you guys joined us today. Like I said, we had 50 stories on wire this week. We're going to be working on a lot for next week, and we hope we'll see you next Friday with Train's Newswire summary.